So I guess it doesn't matter where you guys sit, just please do sit. So this session, as I see it, is an attempt to kind of take to the corporate context the discussion we had this morning about the digital economy. What does it mean for companies concretely? It's very closely tied to the session that was just in this room earlier about innovation and the role of companies in relationship to Silicon Valley or instead of Silicon Valley. Innovation certainly be a big part of this conversation too. I just want to quickly introduce who we have up here. James Barresi, who is CTO and SVP for Payment Services at PayPal. Kim Metcalf-Kupres, who's the Vice President and CMO of Johnson Controls, who I had a good chance to meet this summer and got very impressed with all the things that a Milwaukee-based old industrial company is doing. I think you'll find it's not what you expect from an old online middle America industrial company. She's nodding. Mike Sutcliffe, who's Group Chief Executive for Accenture Digital. Very happy to have him here. And finally, Raj Taneja. Taneja. Sorry. God, I got all the other ones good. Right? EVP for Technology at Visa with 7,000 employees that report. And how many do you have, James, at PayPal reporting to you?
We have about 3,000 in my group, but there are about 5,000 people in product and tech.
So you're doing something similar at PayPal, and I'm pleased they both were happy to be on this panel together. That's good. I wanted to start, Mike, with you, because you're sort of like the big picture view guy here, although I think admirably everyone on this session has a big picture view. When you listened, were you there this morning? Did you hear the chamber session?
Sure.
You know, and when you think about that rather stark set of disruptive developments that we're in the midst of, first of all, did you think anything was overstated? And specifically, when you work with companies, which you do day in and day out, what are you telling them about what they should do to stay alive, really? You know, Chambers didn't say it, I don't think, this morning, but he frequently says 40% of companies today are going to be gone in 10 years. So what do we do about that?
Well, you know, first of all, he's right. You know, what we tell clients is every company is a digital company, whether they know it or not. Their employees are coming to work with digital devices. They're using them to get their work done, and they're looking for more innovation and the authority inside the organization to do more. The Fortune 1000 obviously has been looking at Silicon Valley, but lots of other places of innovation around the world, and asking what they can learn and what they can leverage. And the conversations that we have is really around how to accomplish their mission using these different combinations of tools that are available to them today. And I would tell you, while they're concerned about being disrupted, they're also excited about the ability to disrupt, to create a better customer experience, a better employee experience, a better patient experience, a better citizen experience. And so they're looking at these digital tools and they're saying, wow, you know, I don't have to do things the way I did it last year. I can solve problems this year I couldn't have afforded to solve last year because the combinatorial economics are changing so quickly that they're realizing that the future is really up to them to imagine and create. And most of them are pretty excited about it. I would say they're more excited than they are scared.
Well, they're more excited than they were, or more aggressive than they were 2 years ago even, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Because I know we at Techonomies have been saying since we got started 5 years ago, every company is a technology company, every CEO is a technologist, every company is a software company. We've said all those things at one time or another. And I think 5 years ago it was like, yeah, okay. Today it's like, we know. But then how do you translate that into action is the question. But the mindset shift has happened, you're saying.
Well, it clearly has, and we've seen, you know, the rise of the chief digital officer as what I think is going to be an interim position in most companies, because what most companies are realizing is it's not really just one person. The entire executive team is going to have to become aware of and know how to take advantage of all these digital capabilities as just a core part of what they do every day. So, you know, we've seen them pay attention, learn, listen, experiment, and get excited about what's possible.
So, Raj, you're with a massive global company that is going through a lot of change. And you're also a longtime Microsoft veteran, very close protege of Satya Nadella. For 11 years you worked directly with him, and now you're running all the technology at Visa. How are you guys thinking about this challenge of staying relevant at a time of rapid change?
I think, you know, it's grounded on a couple of concepts. The first one is to always be humble. And the second one is to always be open-minded. If you look at Visa, we were formed 58 years ago with a central thesis. The thesis was electronic payments are good for commerce, good for societies, and that the Visa network should add the greatest value to every stakeholder. But over the course of these nearly 6 decades, things have changed. So if the core of what you believe in remains a constant, then everything else should be a variable. And the only way to take our assumptions about our customers, about technology, about our people, about the ecosystem, about regulations, and be open-minded and be able to change is to remain humble and to always test those. And we are making some fundamental changes as a result of that mindset. We are taking what was essentially a very closed network, closely guarded, connecting to banks through private networks and our own machinery on both sides. And we are fundamentally doing the exact opposite of that going forward, and we're opening up our network to our ecosystem through APIs, and we're saying everybody should come and connect to us and build with us. And that's a core pillar of some of the changes and transformations that we are doing, but again, grounded on the core principles that we had when we formed the company, on the power of electronic payments, and being open-minded and constantly testing the theory of our business.
Yeah. But you've also, as the CTO, is that your title? Yes, EVP Technology, sorry. Well, you are the CTO.
Yeah.
You've tried really hard to instill a sort of greater sense of urgency, right?
Yes.
I mean, and how is that going? Is that a hard thing in an organization of this scale? And how hard?
But change is hard, no matter how you look at it. Everybody, it's very fashionable. Everybody says we need to change. The importance of change, the imperative is there, until it comes to them. Oh, you're talking about me? Seriously, he needs to change and she needs to change, but I didn't realize you were actually talking about me. So change is hard, and it requires a lot of conviction, and it requires courage to instill a sense of urgency and to sort of put the controls and to put the processes that allow you to make traction with that. And it is not easy by any metric, but if the organization rallies around it, and the end result is very clear and communicated well and articulated again and again and again, then you start getting traction. Yeah. And like anything, once you get momentum, then you can speed it up quite a bit.
So the messaging has to be really consistent and essentially loud.
Yeah, your true north has to be very clear. What is the true north?
Right.
Why are we changing? What is the imperative? What decisions did we make in the past? Are we reversing now, and why?
Yeah.
And that's where the humility is important, to say these decisions were good decisions at that point in time based on what was then the latest and greatest in technology and environment. As those things have changed, we now need to evolve and embrace that and do things differently, as long as the core of what we are doing remains the same, which is electronify payments and add the greatest value from our point of view to our stakeholders.
Yeah, that's really interesting. James, and we'll get to you in a minute, Ken. But you are in a company that, of the new economy, but has been around long enough that I think you're already re-evaluating and redesigning, in a sense, the company. And by splitting off from eBay, in a way, I would say, I don't know if you think of it the way he was talking about becoming more open. In a way, you're becoming more open because no longer being part of another affiliated entity, you have a lot more flexibility to do new things with partners, right?
That's right. And one of the things I look at is any technology platform, it's infrastructure that enables a company to innovate. And if you do an analogy, let's say a first world country with modern infrastructure, roads, rail, and others, enables that country to compete compared to one that doesn't have any infrastructure. And the difference is with a lot of companies is that software is hidden. Right, it's buried and it's easy to be neglected. And one of the things that I've been very focused on is taking the platforms and what we have at PayPal and accelerating a massive transformation to modernizing them. Because ultimately, for any company, that's going to be the asset that helps you innovate, go faster, compete more aggressively. And it's just, I think it's only the architects and lead engineers and others who can really see it. And yet it's probably the biggest drag on most companies' ability to execute.
The actual technology,
the actual
architecture
technology
on which their business sits.
That's right. And but making the right investments breaks you free and sets you up for just this hyper-competitive world we're in, where you need to constantly pivot, change, innovate, open up, work with partners better, work with third parties. But it takes a lot of both disciplines and capabilities as well as technologies to make that real.
And you have really been starting from scratch, really, with some core systems. Can you talk a little bit about that? I think you said one is finished, one of the major ones is already done, and the absolute basic one you're rewriting entirely also.
That's right. So we've rewritten all the major product experiences at PayPal. So it's pretty much 15 years of the company's existence, and we saw that just there had been a lot of calcification. So it was an opportunity to rewrite every single aspect of it. And those things you don't do in one shot. So piece by piece, module by module, we've done that. We're in the final stages of ramping them. So we do it in percentages of traffic. But it's a great flywheel to accelerate the business.
And even the core payment engine, which is the whole company resides on, you rewrote that.
Yeah, we're in the middle of that.
Yeah, it's still not done.
That's right.
But I mean, Raj was talking about messaging inside the organization, and it would seem that doing that would send a huge message in itself. Like, if we're not content with the thing that our entire company was built on, then nothing else is sacrosanct. Does that happen?
Yeah, I agree, and it went across the way we work. Moving to a whole new process in Agile, the way we're seating, the way groups come together versus being isolated. The decor of the office, like it's everything. It led to us reevaluating our culture, and the title of this is our ability to do change and constantly reinvent ourselves. I think it really accentuated that.
So Kim, there's a lot of analogy there to several things we've heard already, things that are going on at Johnson Controls. First of all, talk quickly about what Johnson Controls is, because I think a lot of people may not know, and you're going through a giant transformation, concretely splitting the company up and also changing it. Yeah.
Sure. Johnson Controls, for those of you who don't know us, we're a 130-year-old multi-industrial company, a little over $44 billion last year in revenue. Over the last 2 years, and we operate primarily in the buildings, energy storage, and automotive space. About a third of our profits come from automotive, but a little over half of our revenue comes from automotive. Over the last 2 years, we have made a conscious decision to migrate away from the automotive industry and to divest our non-core businesses in order to reinvest and grow in our strategic growth platforms around buildings and energy storage. And that has led to about $10 billion in divestitures over the last 2 years, with the addition of about $4 billion in acquisitions. And just in the last 3 months, we announced that we were going to completely spin our automotive business into a separate public company. So we're going through a little bit of change.
Yeah.
And, but over 130 years, we've gone through a lot of change as technology has evolved multiple times in all of our industries. You think about the shift in HVAC controls from pneumatic to digital back in the 70s. That was a pretty profound and disruptive change for us. The swing in our automotive businesses that actually got us to be a Fortune 100 company was the outsourcing of interiors by our automotive customers. And then with the downturn in the 2000s, they went to a completely different model and commoditized all of the interiors. And so we had to vertically integrate and go to component sourcing models. So the constant change both in technology in terms of our offerings and the evolution of those offerings, but also the business models, and then the infrastructure to support those changing business portfolios has been a pretty consistent theme around our company for a long time.
But now the core that you're keeping is building controls and that kind of thing. That area in itself is undergoing massive transformation societally.
Yeah, so when we think about the global megatrends around urbanization, around the rise of the middle class, our products are typically, essential everyday kinds of technologies that you don't really want, but you can't start your car without them, you can't heat your homes without them, and just for basic functionality of urban civilized society, we're an essential everyday applied technologies company. And so the market is coming to us globally as cities are developing. Different technologies are taking hold in different regions, so our ability to expand and innovate around the world is essential. But those things, the products that we're investing in broadly around building technology platforms as well as energy storage platforms are the critical places where we're putting our future.
Now you became the CMO roughly 2 years ago.
About 2 years
with
ago.
the new CEO. You worked very closely with the CEO. Both of you came up inside the company, but you've been running the company only for a fairly short time. And your set of responsibilities are quite broad for somebody who's called the CMO. Talk a little bit about your leadership role and the way you work with the CEO and the way the leadership of the company is trying to send the message of urgency.
So for an industrial company, a CMO is a questionable role. For us, we take a very integrated view of, my charter is to drive growth for the company, growth and innovation. So I've got functional leadership for driving our sales, marketing, strategy, business transformation, innovation, and communications and brand functions. That gives me matrix responsibility across the businesses, working in partnership with our operating leaders to achieve today's results through inherent capabilities and define the Johnson Controls way, if you will, so that we can be faster to market and have capabilities that are ubiquitous and transferable across our business units, but then also have some privilege of focus around enterprise-oriented initiatives around innovation and around strategy and business transformation that get in the way of the focus of running a day-to-day P&L.
Thank you. You know what? One thing that struck me in doing the prep for this was in talking to James and Raj. You guys are sort of co-opetitors or whatever that word is. What is the word?
Co-opetition.
What is the word for? What is a noun for that though? But
Co-opetitor.
no, but how if you describe them?
We'd call it partners.
Co-opetitors. Anyway, it's just a joke. The point is, you're in a similar business, and you've done some very similar things in terms of rethinking the technology function, and particularly taking more control of things that you formerly sort of outsourced and such. So you made a major decision to create 2,000 new engineering jobs and to get rid of a significant portion of the outsourced providers. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then, James, I want you to talk about some of the analogous changes that have happened at PayPal.
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, when we started thinking about the changes we were making, you also look at the decisions that were made around organizational geometry and composition and mix and who are the people who are doing the work. And over the course of time, like most companies, a part of the work is insourced and a part of it is outsourced, and there's a balance to it based on what value the company gets from its partners. As we look into the future, though, we are a technology company at Visa. We build software, we host software, and we run it in real time. In fact, we were the quintessential SaaS company before SaaS was even a term or fashionable. So as we looked into what our core assets need to be, our people are number one in that. And so we decided to change the mix and to really hire more of our own people as opposed to banking on outsourced providers as much, but yet to partner with a few partners that brought strategic value to us, either in systems or competencies or in other areas of scale. So we brought in 2,000 people. Now, this is good for the company because you maintain IP and continuity of resources. You invest in people. They are building the careers with you, and you are building your own IP. And so when you do that, you get another unexpected benefit, which is that as people come in, they question the status quo. You add a level of healthy tension in the organization. Those who have been there for a long time, who know the way things are working, they like it, they are deep proponents of that. You bring in somebody new and they say, hey, why don't you do it this way? And that dialogue, if properly managed, actually adds a tremendous amount of value to the company. And these were the reasons we ended up making that big decision to hire 2,000 new engineers and change the mix of the organization. And long term, I think it will be the biggest change we have made over and above everything else.
Give that statistic you gave me about the source code, the number of companies in the source code.
In the outsourcing, well, what happens is when you start outsourcing to others who are coming in to help you, over the course of decades, that list becomes very long. In our case, it had gone from just a few dozen companies to over 100. And that dilutes the IP of the company in terms of the total value you get from the investments you're making in people. And so we as an executive group decided, no, we want to bring the organization in-house more now than in the past.
So James, he didn't give all the numbers, but you told me 150 down to 2 companies that had touched your source code.
That's
Yeah.
the number of
That's
companies
not a secret,
that we
right?
work with. Yes, it's not a secret. It's kind of how we started changing the mix.
Yeah.
And there is nothing sacrosanct about 2 or 3 or 4. It's the number of companies through whom you can get real strategic value
Yeah.
that are investing in you much deeper than if you have dozens or more than 100 companies that you're working with.
I want to get your thoughts on this in a second. But so you mentioned Agile before, James, but that was only part of the change. You also made a big move to bring more work inside, didn't you?
Yeah, a massive change. And I think what gets at the heart of this is that too many companies across the world tried to treat software engineering as a bean counting cost per unit exercise and push costs down. And what the mistake was just losing that as a core capability of doing high quality software engineering and the things that were brought up of being able to use your HR processes and other things to improve it. So when I got to PayPal, it was 55% of the engineering labor force was third-party contractors, and it was very much out of our shop. It's less than 15% now, so a pretty wide swing, really fast to shift it. And I believe it makes sense to have small, critical partners for parts of your business, but you don't want to get into huge swaths of your organization being completely run by outsiders, especially as every single industry is being revolutionized by technology. You're either going to be revolutionizing that industry or you're going to get revolutionized. So I think having that capability is really, really critical to any company. And it was a big thing that we changed as fast as we could. And it takes a while. It's hard. You got to really focus on making that kind of shift.
How do you think of that, Mike? Is that something you see a lot? I mean, is it just a choice? How does one think about this issue of inside, outside, and how to add agility, so to speak?
Well, I think Accenture is probably one of the largest technology delivery firms in the world, and we really see just a huge gap between what we consider to be application maintenance work, which is heavily outsourced and offshored, and frankly, the skills to do that are fairly commoditized, versus delivering new capability. And we see what we call liquid app development, right, where it's much more open, collaborative, much more use of API architectures and SDKs and connected. So we say agile, connected, and intelligent. The intelligent part is actually embedding AI into the apps themselves, so they're self-learning apps. And
is that something almost everybody effectively is going to need to do?
they'll have to, yeah, absolutely, because you won't be able to continue to have human people keep updating the code every time the app needs to learn how to do more personalized work. So from our perspective, one of the key battlegrounds is experience, delivering better experiences. The underlying battleground there is around personalization, giving you a different experience that I'm going to give Rajat when you come to the same website or you use the same app. And even if you come twice, and I've seen you once and now I know you better the second time, I want a more personalized and precise treatment of you. And in order to do that, you need the app to have contextual awareness and also have artificial intelligence built in so that it can adjust itself and allow you to perform your intention in a more personalized way. So you cannot afford to have humans coding that line by line. You've got to embed artificial intelligence engines into the app design itself.
So it's interesting, you mentioned personalization and AI both. These are essentially increasingly going to be core competences of every successful company.
Absolutely.
It's not like, oh yeah, some companies will be able to do that and some won't. So that's bracing for companies that many of them have not had any of that competence up to now, right?
Yeah, and we have a design group called Fjord, which does design and innovation work around experiences and delivering experiences. They've just released a paper called Living Services, which I think fundamentally reframes the expectation we have on what it means to design a service. And the service could be anything from a medical service to a learning service or a retail service. And their description of a living service is that the service itself is adaptive. And if you think about what it means to design that, first of all, it's a lot harder if you're a designer to design an adaptive experience. And if you think of what it means to build it and deliver it from a technology standpoint, wow, whole different level of sophistication required to do that. So yeah, I think the reality is the bar's been raised across the board and it's going to apply across industries. It's not just whether or not Netflix or Uber or Visa or somebody can come up with something that's unique to their industry. But it's going to be, my experience in interacting with one of those that's done well in this industry. Mentally, I'm going to say, why can't it work this way? When I interact with my government, or I interact with a hospital, or I interact with the billing company for a particular service I've already got.
So Kim, when you're thinking of this wholesale set of changes that are happening at Johnson Controls, do you think of it as we can do things faster than our competitors have been doing, and therefore really get a new advantage in the industry? Is that part of it? And connected to that, well, anyway, and then also any other observations that you kind of took away from the discussion this morning on digital that might apply specifically to the company?
Well, so digitization for us is ubiquitous across our operating models. It's also embedded within our technologies. So the smarter our devices become, the smarter our equipment becomes, the greater our value-added services become. Then when we talk about our operating models, we find that the technology infrastructure within the company is today an impediment to some of the things we want to do, because we're paying the sins of acquisitions and integrations of the past. We talk about our automotive spin. It's going to cost us close to $500 million, and we've been public about this, $500 million just on the IT systems to separate the two companies. Wow. And our objective is to have no TSAs at separation, because
TSA is?
Transitional services agreements. So we really want the two companies to be able to operate independently without legacy hooks and barriers. But yeah, the whole motivation is to drive speed and to drive agility, so that as we unlock value in both sides of the company and the capital structures support the right kinds of investments, we're able to invest in innovation, we're able to be a consolidator, we're able to be an acquirer, and that we're able to do that in a really fast way. And to do it in parts of the world where we may not be as well established. So we've got to have that foundation that we can move quickly.
I wanted to ask any of you to comment about one thing that I think was quite interesting this morning. This idea that, as the economy shifts and jobs change, we're all going to have a significant portion of our work automated away. And it requires this constant reinvention of the employee, from the CEO all the way down. Are any of you doing interesting things, or have ideas about, or have seen like cutting edge ideas on how to do that? Because it seems like it's a wonderful aspiration to be able to really continually retrain everybody. But having worked myself in a Fortune 500 company for 30 years before I started doing this, it doesn't seem like it's typical to be thinking that way.
Probably the thing we're doing is trying to build that culture of constant skill building in the employee base, so that it becomes their responsibility. We're supporting it with budgets and tuition reimbursement and a bunch of classes, but we really push hard. Everybody's got to be doing this. And the mantra is, right, what we're doing yesterday, today isn't going to be sufficient for the future. And I think that whole workforce and employee base has to be very agile in terms of being, because we don't know exactly what to train for. But I think having that skill set and culture is really important in every company, because these changes are going to be pretty disruptive.
I think one of the challenges we have in changing an old company to new models is moving from every general manager has all of the support functions reporting to him or her, to shared services models and self-help technology platforms, which ironically make executives far less productive, because you're spending all of your time trying to figure out how to process transactions in Workday instead of leading your teams. And so managing from distributed, dedicated support resources to shared services that are much more productive and lean, but then also smartly managing from one generation to the next in terms of technical savvy, in terms of self-support on some of these applications, and getting the applications to be efficient support systems as opposed to things that have to be served, are, I think, some of the transitional changes that we have to face.
I want to hear audience thoughts and questions if there's any. I'd just be happy to go to that. But in the meantime, one thing I thought was interesting again this morning, and Chambers seems to say things interesting almost every time he opens his mouth, but this idea that, the transition to a digital society requires kind of a constant dialogue, constant corporate and individual reinvention. I'm just curious if any of you have observations about or are within your own organizations, and I think this is happening at Accenture quite clearly, consciously trying to really kind of consciousness raise the employee population about the nature of an entirely new reality. And you've touched on this too in some of the things you said, Raj. Any comments from anybody?
Well, I mean, yeah, so we've got about 360,000 employees around the world, and we've got to have all of them understand digital and what it means, not just for their individual jobs or the geographic area that they're working in, which, by the way, there are huge variances as we go geographically across the world, but also by industry. So if you're serving the nuclear industry or the chemical industry or the industrial products industries, there are fundamentally different things happening there. And so what we've done, the first thing is we've just announced publicly that we've abandoned the historical perspective of doing what we would call performance reviews, and we're focusing our employees on something we call performance achievement. To understand what it is you're trying to achieve and how to go do that.
That's exactly the kind of thing I was thinking about.
Well,
because I wanted to hear that kind of idea.
Yeah. The other thing that we've done in parallel with that is we've completely changed the paradigm of learning inside the company. So we used to have 3-week classes in one of our centers around the world where you would go and go to class and have an intense instructor-led experience, and we would have certifications.
Yeah, you had a whole university in Illinois. I remember.
We've got multiple ones around the world, right? And now we've got literally thousands of digital learning boards, which are real-time, short cycle learning on what you need to learn. And then you can have a series of those that build towards a more in-depth topic. So we have some where you can actually go all the way through, working with different universities around the world and get master's degrees in different areas. But you're taking them in little short bursts at a time, as opposed to, here's a year-long coursework that has got this very specific timing, and you do it at this point in your career. What we're saying is you're always learning, and you've got to decide what to learn based on your objectives individually. And if you're working in a chemical environment in Russia, that may be a little different than an industrial products China company or consumer products in North America. So we want 360,000 people to determine what their learning needs are and then go do that.
Yeah. No, Accenture, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say ours is a little different. We took this concept of disruption that's happening in the world and actually fused it with the way we're orienting our product teams and our business, that we want to be the ones that help basically revolutionize payments and really open up and serve the underserved around the world. And so we see it as a really positive benefit, and we can help make it a better experience for everyone. And that's how we've taken this big change that's happening and turned it into a positive for us.
Coming back to you, Mike, unless you wanted to say something.
No, I think I would agree a lot with James over there. Part of raising the consciousness is making people aware of the secular trends that one could be scared of or one could be very excited about.
Right.
There's an old saying.
We try to be excited about it here.
Exactly. They say, may you live in interesting times, right? They don't say, may you be happy. They say, may you live in interesting times. And I think embracing those and harnessing the power of those trends to do more profound change, as James was mentioning, I think raises the consciousness and gets more buy-in. And then you have to supplement it with what Mike was talking about, the underlying foundational capabilities to teach people and train them and have different ways to learn. And those two together become a very powerful force.
But Mike, I'm sorry. Your business is basically consciousness raising for your clients, right? I mean, quickly describe what makes Accenture digital from Accenture per se. I mean, and then also, to what degree do you apply that on Accenture itself?
Well, so first of all, Accenture runs 5 different businesses. We have Accenture Strategy, Accenture Business Consulting, Accenture Technology, Accenture Operations, and then Accenture Digital. And we're the part that actually brings all of those together to try and change the way the world works and lives. And so our aspiration is to disrupt.
Yeah.
Right? We want to provide a better world tomorrow than the one we have today. And so what we're doing is we're helping each of our clients in each of the industries have a framework to think through what is happening, where is disruption occurring, and not necessarily in your rearview mirror from your direct competitors, but what's happening in the adjacent market that's likely to impact you, and what can you learn from innovation that may be coming from a small startup. So we have a very large open innovation program that works with literally thousands of startups around the world. It works with university incubators, university labs, incubation labs, et cetera. And what we do is we try and accelerate the take-up of the ideas that are coming from all of these innovation areas into that Fortune 1000 world and say, let's help those clients understand what's happening, where and how it can be applied, and most importantly, when's the right time to make this type of bet in your business. And so that does require experimentation. I think what you said earlier is right. It's a constant series of experiments to understand what can work and then how can you scale it to make an impact across your entire business.
Kim, I just wonder, you know, you're in Milwaukee. It's not a city that we think of as.
It's a great place.
I love it, actually. I do love it. But no, is there any greater challenge, though, when you're sort of a little bit away from the centers of digital, you know, bubble mentality, perhaps? Is that a positive or negative, or is it neutral?
Yes, I think so. I mean, you know, certainly the biggest challenges we have would be in terms of attracting and retaining talent, world-class talent. You know, we talked about the Silicon Valley phenomenon earlier this afternoon. I would never place someone in Silicon Valley as a remote person, as an island here, because it's basically outsourcing them to go find their next job. What we have to do are build ecosystems that connect us with our constituents around the world and strong, stimulating relationships and collaboration opportunities, but also maintain connectivity with the company and keep people whole as part of the team. So you know, we do have the ability to move. I think we have an advantage that we're able to move people around the world. We're able to move them from one business unit to another, so you can have a long and fruitful career with us. It's very dynamic, but it's also not necessarily as meteoric, if you will. And so our challenge is moving people in non-traditional growth opportunities where they can make a difference and be entrepreneurial, but it's not going to be in a venture capital kind of environment.
So there's two people who have something to say, and I want to get them both on the floor, and then we'll respond. Go ahead. First over here, and then over here.
Thanks. Josh Reynolds, Quantified. The description for the session talked about how all this change requires courage, and it's asking leaders to be courageous, especially at larger companies. I recently went from a very large company to a startup where there's a lot more freedom to fail quickly and talk about failure very openly in a celebratory manner. My question to this group is, where do you find your courage most called upon? Where is courage most needed in an organization that's facing change?
Okay, and let's get one over here, and then, because we don't have tons of time here. Okay, it's coming.
Hi, Jody Westby. So when you look at change and you end up using tools, you have more collaborative partnerships, using collaborative platforms, you've got people dispersed, you're using more mobile, then you end up with some unintended consequences that occur through cybersecurity issues. So how do you factor in all the security issues? Because you're really relying on technology. How do you factor in that cybersecurity layer when you're trying to figure out change?
Well, let's stick with courage, first of all. That's a little bit more.
So I would say the key thing on the courage front is you know where you want to go. So there's this North Star you want to get to, and your teams are all working hard to navigate. And the courage moment is when you realize that maybe a team's gone down a dead end or a bad path, and you need to reset. But that doesn't mean the destination's wrong. Right, and you've got to have that culture to say we're going to learn from this, we're going to restart, but we're on a long mission and we know where we want to go, and you keep on pushing through. A lot of times people just scrap what the goal was, and that's the wrong answer. So I think it's maintaining that vision through hard times.
And really quickly, any observations on this cybersecurity, which is a big new topic to open up here, but.
At Visa, we do about 100 billion transactions and process $7 trillion worldwide. So security is job number one for everybody every day. But at the same time, to your point, we're opening up the way we work. We're letting people bring their own devices. We are enabling people to work and collaborate in a much different way than ever before. And so what it does require is a lot of technical thought into the very design, the genetic DNA of how the network works, how you layer security in, how you track what is happening, as well as give people the freedom to access what they can access. It requires a multifaceted, layered approach where technology itself is a solution to enabling open collaboration with security built into it. it's a topic that could take a couple hours just by itself. But suffice to say, we go with the possibility of the and, not the or in that. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Sorry, we're running out of time, Terry. Thank you all so much. Really interesting conversation, and there's plenty more to discuss, but I really enjoyed it.